The room was quiet, though quiet had never felt so heavy. I sat in the corner of my apartment, the glow from my desk lamp failing to push back the darkness, and listened to the hum of electronics. My laptop screen flickered in unsteady pulses, and from somewhere beneath the floorboards or behind the walls, I thought I heard a subtle vibration, almost like the building itself was breathing. The air was cold, pressing against my skin with the weight of water, curling around my arms and settling in the hollows of my shoulders. I pulled my cardigan tighter, even though I had no reason to shiver. Then the phone rang. Not the gentle chime I had programmed, but a shrill, abrasive tone that sliced through the silence. I stared at the screen. An unknown number. My thumb hovered over the answer button. Hesitation lodged in my throat, a thick, sticky fear I couldn't identify. The rational part of me wanted to dismiss it, but something deeper, curious and unbidden, compelled me to pick up. "Hello!" My voice sounded too loud, echoing unnaturally in the room, though no one had entered. The line crackled, a white noise hissing under the words that followed. "Don't forget what you promised." I froze. The voice was familiar, impossibly so. It carried the warmth and cadence of someone I knew, yet something about it was wrong. There was a delay, a faint echo as if the words were being spoken from a space that didn't exist. My stomach tightened. I shook my head. I think you have the wrong number," I stammered. There was a pause, and then the voice laughed, or something like laughter. It was low, hollow, stretching the syllables of the words. "No," it whispered. "You remember." I pressed the phone to my chest, my own pulse loud in my ears. My memories were fragments, shards of something I couldn't quite grasp. Faces blurred, promises half-formed, moments that might have been dreams or nightmares. But with each heartbeat, they edged closer to recognition. Something I had promised, or something I was promised, hovered at the edge of my consciousness. The room around me shifted. My desk lamp flickered violently, the shadows of my books and papers stretching into impossible angles. The clock on the wall skipped a second, or perhaps an hour, I couldn't tell. I reached to touch it, and my fingers passed through nothing. The hands of the clock hovered a millimeter off the face, trembling. I don't understand," I whispered into the phone. The voice softened, almost tender, but there was a jaggedness beneath it, a jaggedness that made the skin on my neck crawl. "Do you remember?" I shook my head, even though no one could see me. The air thickened. My reflection in the darkened window warped. At first it was subtle, my eyes a little too wide, my mouth a fraction too long. Then it moved independently of me, tilting its head when I stayed still, grinning when my face remained neutral. I stumbled back. "Stop it!" My words sounded thin, fragile. "Stop what?" The voice replied, almost amused. "It's already begun." I looked around the room. My chair had rotated slightly, the books on the shelves shifted, though I was certain I had left them in perfect order. A cold draft rolled across my bare ankles, though all the windows were closed. The hum of the electronics deepened into a resonance that seemed to vibrate through my chest. My chest ached with anticipation or fear. I couldn't tell which. "What do you want from me?" I asked, voice trembling. "Time," the voice said. Then, after a pause, "It's your time to fulfill it." I tried to recall anything, any memory of a promise, any fragment that could anchor me. But the edges were fraying, memories dissolving like smoke. And then a flicker. A garden, sunlight dappling the grass, laughter that didn't belong to anyone I could name. Hands holding mine, pressing, urging. A sensation of being bound, but not by ropes. By something older, more patient. Something that waited until the right moment. I stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the rug. My lamp toppled, but it didn't shatter. It floated, suspended midair, rocking slightly as if held by invisible fingers. My breathing hitched. Shadows coalesced in corners, forming shapes that leaned forward, watching. I could feel them watching. "You promised?" The voice whispered again, closer now, as if speaking from inside the room instead of the phone. My phone's screen glowed with static, the digits twisting and warping. bending into shapes I couldn't read. I dropped it. It landed face up on the carpet, still ringing. The screen now displaying my own face staring back at me, grinning wide, a voice echoing from my lips, though I hadn't moved them. I ran to the window, pressed my hands to the glass. My reflection was still there, still grinning, still speaking. And then I realized I hadn't promised anything. I never had. But the voice, my voice, or the thing wearing my voice, had. It had waited. And now it was time. The room lurched. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing in and out, tightening around me. The lamp floated higher, tilting, casting long, crooked shadows that writhed like snakes. The air tasted metallic. My knees buckled. I fell backward, and when I hit the carpet, the room shifted again. The corners stretching impossibly, the ceiling bending like liquid. The phone slid toward me, crawling across the floor. Its screen now showed a landscape I didn't recognize. A field under a pale moon, figures kneeling, their faces obscured, hands reaching for me. "You will fulfill it," the voice said, no longer distant, no longer on the line. It was everywhere, inside my head, my chest, pressing against my skin. "Because it is your voice that promised." I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the hum, the vibrating electronics, the cold press of the air. My own reflection laughed back at me, a mouth opening impossibly wide, teeth too sharp, eyes glinting with hunger. I clawed at the carpet, tried to scramble away, but the room had changed. The door was gone, replaced by a wall of shifting shadows. Time had fractured. The clock hands spun. The lamp hovered. The window now showed stars that didn't belong. And above it all, the voice, my voice, whispered over and over, each echo a reminder, a promise, a sentence I had never made. "Don't forget what you promised." I wanted to resist, to fight, to deny it. But I knew then whatever I had promised, whatever had been claimed in my name, had already begun. And it wanted me to keep it. The last thing I remember before the room consumed me entirely was the touch of the air itself, cold and intimate, like fingertips on my skin. And the voice, merging finally with my own. "It's time." And then silence, the unnatural kind that presses into your bones, heavier than any sound, colder than any air, and somehow alive. I woke to the faint scent of dust and something older, something that smelled like forgotten corners of the house. My head ached, a dull throb from a dream I couldn't fully recall. A dream of corridors that stretched impossibly, walls bending in on themselves, and a whisper that always seemed just out of reach. I had dismissed it at first, the kind of thing that clings to memory like fog. But the moment I sat up, the familiarity of the room felt wrong. The bedroom was dim, lit only by the moon slanting through heavy curtains. My dresser, which I had left orderly, had a drawer slightly ajar. The clock ticked, though the sound seemed exaggerated, like it had been amplified by the thick silence. A floorboard creaked under my own weight as I swung my legs to the carpet, and I realized I was holding my breath. The house felt alive, not with malice, exactly, but with awareness, as if it had been waiting for me to wake. I padded toward the hallway to get water, the soles of my feet brushing the old rug. That was when I noticed it. The hallway bent slightly, not sharply, but enough that my eye caught the curve in the pale moonlight. I froze. I had walked this corridor hundreds of times. It had never bent. I shook my head, willing rational thought to anchor me. "It's just the angle. My eyes playing tricks," I whispered. But the subtle distortion persisted. The air shifted with it, pressing against my skin in a way that was almost tactile. As I stepped forward, the curve seemed to respond, straightening minutely when I paused, stretching when I hesitated. My heartbeat sped. A cold realization crept over me. The house was aware. It was watching. I pressed on, each step deliberate, ears straining for sound. Floorboards groaned underfoot, each creak a punctuation in the oppressive silence. The shadows along the walls stretched unnaturally long, bending toward me, then recoiling, as though breathing. I passed portraits I had seen 1,000 times. My grandmother's stern gaze seemed to soften as I walked by. A family friend's smile widened unnaturally, teeth glinting even in the moonlight. I blinked. The expressions were gone, replaced with neutrality. My pulse thudded in my ears. The hallway narrowed, then widened, but never consistently. It obeyed no architectural logic. I reached for a door I thought led to the kitchen, but it wasn't there. In its place was a section of wall that seemed to shimmer slightly, like heat over pavement. My hand passed through the cold paint before I could grasp the knob. I pulled back, my skin crawling. I tried the mirrors lining the hall. My reflection lagged, shifting slightly behind my movements. One step forward, the mirror hesitated, then copied me. I waved a hand. The mirrored hand followed a heartbeat later. I stumbled back, heart racing, tripping over the rug that seemed to have shifted underfoot. The house felt sentient, yes, but patient, observant. It did not rush me. It let me explore, let me misstep, let me see the impossible bend of corridors and the subtle distortions in reflection. And I realized something chilling. It wasn't hostile. It was curious. It was old, older than memory, and it knew me. I tried to retrace my steps, to reach the safety of the living room. Yet the hallway looped in on itself in ways that defied logic. I passed the same portrait of my great-grandfather 3 times, each time his gaze sharper, more inquisitive. My feet ached, my lungs burned, and yet I could not leave. Not because I was trapped, but because the house refused to let me. It wanted to watch, to follow, to observe the patterns of my hesitation. I stopped in the center of the hall, trying to collect myself. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing subtly in the darkness. My fingers brushed the wallpaper. It felt alive under my touch, warm in one spot, cool in another. The ceiling arched slightly higher than before, the light from the sconce bending in ways it shouldn't. I realized I could not trust my senses. Everything in this house was a negotiation between perception and reality. The portraits shifted again. I reached for the nearest one. A landscape, rolling hills under a gray sky, and the hills warped, rising like waves as I touched the frame. The brushstrokes twisted, forming shapes that suggested eyes, faintly watching. I stumbled backward, and the hallway bent further, curling gently as if to keep me within its line of sight. I tried to run. The hallway lengthened, elongating with each step. My own breath echoed, distorted, layered on top of itself. Shadows stretched and leaned, converging at points just beyond my vision. The mirrors no longer reflected me accurately. Instead, I saw myself wandering the halls in impossible positions, sometimes twice, sometimes thrice, always following the same path. And then I reached a familiar doorway. Relief surged. I recognized the frame, but the door was gone. In its place, a wall perfectly smooth. My hands pounded against it, nails scraping paint, but it did not budge. Panic rose. I had seen enough. I knew the house's patience had limits, and I had crossed some invisible line. I stepped back, breathing hard. The hallway bent once more, not sharply, just subtly, like a smile. I could feel it observing, cataloging. I remembered the dream, the corridor stretching, the whisper just out of reach. I understood then that I was never meant to escape. Not really. Yet as dawn broke, the distortions lessened. The hall straightened. The portraits resumed their familiar expressions. The mirrors ceased their lag. Exhausted, I stepped outside into the morning light. The house loomed behind me, silent, still. Its windows caught the sun at angles that seemed to wink, and for a fleeting moment, I swore I saw the hallway inside bend just enough to follow me as I left. Weeks passed. I told myself it had been a dream or sleep deprivation, or the imagination of someone too lonely in an old, creaking house. Yet every time I passed a building with a long, narrow corridor, I felt the same pressure, subtle and insistent, pressing against my skin. I thought I was free. I thought I had escaped. But the house was patient, and houses like that, old, sentient, observant, never forget. One evening, I returned to my old street. The house stood exactly as it had, sunlit and serene. Yet as I walked by, I noticed the faintest bend in the hallway behind the window, just a subtle curve like a smile. It wasn't trapped. It didn't need to trap me. It only needed to watch. And that was enough.